Hi everybody, I've been out in that laboratory again working on some new products. We've got some new things bubbling away and I thought, ooh, bubbles. I better come talk to you about bubbles and air. It's a real nuisance when you're working with resins and polyurethanes and doing your casting. They're the last thing you want. But there are some tricks. I'm going to take you through some of the basics on getting rid of air. We've got a bit of silicone rubber here, which is what we use to make our moulds. You're all pretty familiar with that. But I often get asked, how do we get air bubbles out of our silicone rubber if we haven't got fancy degassing equipment, etc., such as a vacuum chamber? Well, there's a couple of things. One is you start right down near the actual mould itself, and then you lift the rubber up in the air and you'll get a very long, thin stream. Well, here we go. You bring your rubber right down close to the job, then see how, let it start to flow and work in one corner and then lift it up, right up high, and you get a very thin stream. See that? It's about 30 centimetres off the job and it's a long, thin stream. What happens is the air bubbles tear open as they go through that flat stream. And then the rubber itself is forming a dam, which is pushing all the air out in front of it as it flows across the job. So I'm going to do this just for demo purposes. This is not the way to do your mould loading, you know, pouring in, the way you're flooding it left and right all over. You've actually got to stay disciplined and keep to one side and let that rubber push out. That's about right for the job. Okay, so while I've got this silicone rubber mixture, I thought I'll also show you another issue. Again, it's a type of mould where you've got what's called deep undercuts. There's real little pockets in here. And there's a chance that if we were to do a conventional pour, that it would push into those corners or little caves and hold the air in the back end of the cave. So a good technique is to take a disposable brush and actually peel back that rubber, push that silicone right down into those corners, focusing on all the tricky bits. You don't have to do the whole job, but particularly the corners where you think there might be air caught. But while you're at it, if you wish, you can go over the whole job and just get a face coat, so to speak, of silicone rubber. That being done, assuming that was done then, you can then proceed to pour over the back of that. And you've assured that you've got no air pockets or little voids right on the face of the job. Okay, that's covering what to do if you've got a really complicated little mould, a way to further ensure you don't get air bubbles. But do remember that long, thin stream. That's your best friend with getting rid of air. Now, I'll talk about another type of mould. Here we've got one which has been joined up with rubber bands because it's been previously cut. And that's for demoulding because, why? Because we've got a very deep undercut here. So that allows you to get the part out. But also that deep undercut, so to speak, that allows, what can happen is air can, oh, this is a better way. There's our opening, pretend, at the top. The air bubbles come up and they can stay up here rather than coming right out that way. So what we do is we pour solution into this. This is a plaster piece. Before I do that, I want to show you the result if we didn't do this technique of pouring and so forth, slushing it around that I'm going to show you. See this part? This is a fence top capital, and look at all these air bubbles. See how they've been caught up around this top edge. The rest is perfect. It's, you know, pretty well. We've got a few air bubbles again, only because it's filled with foam balls, but they're very minor. But there's a major issue of air caught up around the edges. So what you do is you take that mould and you have your bands on it and you fill it about 1/3 with plaster and then roll it around so that the fluid is coming right up to the neck. Just enough that you fully cover the surfaces. Put it down on the table again and then proceed to fill it right up. But that way you've ensured that there is a face everywhere of the plaster material and no air cells right on the surface. Okay? Now, just going back to our little frog here, which is now settled down and levelled out, another way to get out air is, well, there's a couple. You can just take the step of letting it sit there. It is designed, the silicone rubber that is, for the air to rise up and away. But an even better way is to have something that will actually vibrate it. Now you can do this, and that will cause air to come up off the surface. But I find one of the best is to take a normal, like an orbital sander, and there you go. What we're doing now, you can hear that rattling around, and that is having the effect of lifting the air bubbles up, definitely off the face of the job. There we go. That vibrating will cause a shimmering and lifting of the air off the face of the job, so you'll get a perfect mould when you demould that tomorrow morning. Okay, there is another way to get air out, or a couple more really. This is one that's a little bit unusual in that you can take a mould and using ordinary talcum powder, put some powder in there. Whoops, that's stacks of powder. Okay, what you can do then is you take a brush and just work that into anywhere that the powder didn't make contact, so that you've thoroughly covered the surface of the mould. So what we're doing is we're changing the surface tension on the actual face of the rubber. And this is particularly good for avoiding bubbles when you're using, say, a low melt metal. It really makes the metal get down to the deepest crevice and you don't have air bubble issues, and you end up with a nice little frog like so. Or if you're working with resins, it's not the shot when you're working with something clear, because it will pick up on the surface, but if you're painting the object, it's good. With all the plastics, it does help to get that, like it's almost like a wicking process. It pulls the chemicals into the corner. So it's not a bad practice, but particularly good on the metal work. It really makes all the difference. All right, well, talking of frogs and things, I think it's time I hopped out of here. That's it till next time. Thank you.